What if the most powerful men in your world looked right past the royalty, the wealth, and the beauty, only to drop to their knees for the one girl everyone else threw away? This is a story of ultimate betrayal, a forbidden bond, and a revenge no one saw coming. In the isolated, mist-shrouded valleys of the Blackwood Dominion, bloodline and rank were not just matters of pride, they were the absolute law of survival. At the very bottom of this brutal hierarchy was Harper Lawson. She was an Omega, a designation that practically made her invisible, save for when the higher-ranking pack members needed someone to scrub the packhouse floors or take the blame for their mistakes. Harper possessed a quiet, unassuming beauty, characterized by pale, expressive eyes, and a resilience forged in the fires of constant humiliation. Her life had irrevocably shattered exactly 1 year ago, on her 18th birthday. In werewolf society, a wolf's 18th birthday is a monumental occasion, the day the moon goddess reveals their fated mate. Harper had stood in the grand courtyard of the Blackwood estate, her heart hammering against her ribs as the intoxicating scent of pine and dark chocolate flooded her senses. The scent had led her straight to Derek Sterling. Derek was the golden boy of the Blackwood pack, tall, broad-shouldered, and arrogant. He was the alpha's son, and the heir apparent. For a brief, naive second, Harper believed the moon goddess had blessed her, lifting her from the dirt and placing her at the side of a future leader. But when Derek's gaze met hers, there was no warmth, no sudden realization of love. There was only pure, unadulterated disgust. "You?" Derek had sneered, his voice loud enough to carry across the breathless courtyard. He looked at her threadbare dress and the cleaning supplies still clutched in her trembling hands. The entire pack had gathered, their eyes burning into her like physical brands. "The moon goddess has made a sick joke. I, Derek Sterling, future alpha of the Blackwood Dominion, reject you, Harper Lawson, as my mate and Luna. You are an Omega. You are nothing." The rejection had torn through Harper's chest like a physical blade. The severing of a fated bond was an agony few survived with their minds intact, but Harper had endured it. She collapsed onto the cold cobblestones, gasping for air as her wolf whined in absolute devastation. To make matters infinitely worse, Derek hadn't just rejected her. He immediately turned and offered his hand to Chloe Harrington, the daughter of a wealthy neighboring beta, sealing an alliance and entirely erasing Harper's dignity in one fell swoop. Since that day, Harper had become a ghost in her own home. She was relegated to the lowest quarters of the packhouse, her days consumed by endless, back-breaking labor under the tyrannical eye of Mrs. Gable, the head housekeeper. Harper learned to keep her head down, her scent masked by the harsh chemicals of her cleaning supplies, and her broken heart locked away. But the quiet misery of the Blackwood pack was about to be violently upended. News arrived by royal courier that sent shockwaves through every territory on the continent. The Alpha King, Frederick Crawford, was stepping down. His twin sons, Dominic and Sebastian Crawford, were to assume the throne as co-kings, a rare, unprecedented sharing of absolute power. But there was a catch. Before they could be officially crowned, they required a Luna to anchor their combined, overwhelmingly dominant auras. The Crawford twins were legendary, and not for their mercy. They were 24 years old, towering, lethal, and possessed a devastatingly dark charisma that made seasoned alphas bare their throats in submission. Dominic was the strategist ice-cold, calculating, with eyes like chipped obsidian. Sebastian was the enforcer wild, unpredictable, a smoldering inferno of raw power. Together, they were unstoppable, yet they were entirely mateless. For 5 years, the king had hosted grand galas, parading the most beautiful, high-ranking alpha females from across the globe before them. Daughters of billionaires, descendants of ancient wolf lineages, all draped in silk and dripping with diamonds, and every single one had been brutally dismissed. The twins claimed none of them were strong enough to handle their shared bond. They refused to settle for a political alliance. Their wolves demanded perfection. Now, their final search had brought them to the Pacific Northwest. They were conducting a tour of the provincial packs, and the Blackwood Dominion had been chosen to host the final Grand Mating Gala. The pack house was thrown into absolute chaos. Derek and his father saw this as the ultimate opportunity to elevate their pack's standing. Chloe, despite having accepted Derek's mark, spent an exorbitant amount of money on a gown, arrogant enough to believe the royal twins might look her way and elevate her from a future pack Luna to a queen. For Harper, the royal visit simply meant agonizing extra hours. She spent her nights polishing the grand chandeliers until her fingers bled, scrubbing the marble floors, and pressing the gowns of the women who actively tormented her. She had no delusions of grandeur. She knew what alphas were like. They were cruel, they were proud, and they destroyed whatever did not serve their image. She wanted nothing to do with Dominic and Sebastian Crawford. Just keep your head down, Harper, her only friend. A kitchen maid named Amelia whispered to her on the morning of the gala. Amelia was frantically chopping vegetables, her face flushed with stress. The royals will be here by sundown. If we stay in the shadows, they won't even know we exist. Just serve the champagne and fade into the wallpaper. That's my specialty, Harper replied bitterly, wiping a smudge of dirt from her cheek. But deep inside, her dormant wolf stirred. For the first time since Derek's crushing rejection, Harper felt a strange, restless thrum in her blood, a phantom pull she couldn't quite understand. The night of the mating gala descended upon the Blackwood Dominion with a heavy electric tension. The pack house had been transformed into a vision of opulence. Thousands of fairy lights dripped from the ancient oak trees outside, while inside, the grand ballroom was a sea of velvet, crystal, and desperate ambition. Harper was stationed near the massive double doors, her slender frame suffocated by the stiff, uncomfortable black and white uniform of the service staff. She held a silver tray laden with crystal flutes of champagne, her eyes fixed firmly on the polished marble floor. The air was thick with the overwhelming sense of expensive perfumes and the anxious pheromones of hundreds of unmated females. Every young woman of status was lined up, practically vibrating with anticipation. Chloe Harrington stood near the front, adorned in a breathtaking emerald gown that clung to her curves, a smug smile playing on her ruby-red lips. Derek stood off to the side, looking tense. Suddenly, the string quartet abruptly stopped playing. A heavy, suffocating silence slammed into the room. The massive mahogany doors groaned open, and the temperature in the ballroom seemed to drop by 10 degrees. The air grew dense, charged with an oppressive, terrifyingly pure alpha command that made Harper's knees tremble. They had arrived. Dominic and Sebastian Crawford stepped into the light. They were devastatingly handsome, mirroring each other with brutal perfection. Both stood at 6'4", their broad shoulders filling the doorway. Dominic wore a tailored midnight blue suit, his demeanor composed, his dark eyes sweeping over the room with analytical coldness. Sebastian wore a charcoal suit, the top button of his shirt undone, exuding a predatory, restless energy. The sheer power radiating from them was so intense that several weaker wolves in the room whimpered, involuntarily dropping their gazes. The alpha of the Blackwood pack stepped forward, bowing deeply. "Your Highnesses, welcome to our humble territory." Dominic barely acknowledged him with a slight incline of his head. Sebastian didn't look at the alpha at all. Instead, Sebastian's nostrils flared. A ripple of confusion went through the crowd as the twins suddenly froze. At the edge of the room, near the shadows, Harper gasped quietly. The moment the doors had opened, a scent had hit her, a violent, beautiful crash of ozone, crushing ocean waves, and the deep, smoky scent of burning embers. It was so potent it made her dizzy. Her wolf, silent and mourning for a year, suddenly howled to life, slamming against the confines of her mind with frantic, desperate joy. No, Harper thought, panic seizing her throat. No, no, no! This is impossible! Across the ballroom, Dominic and Sebastian shared a sudden, electrifying look. The boredom vanished from their faces, replaced by a sudden, feral intensity. They didn't look at the line of beautiful, wealthy daughters waiting for them. They ignored Chloe, who thrust her chest out as they walked past. They ignored the alpha. "Do you smell that?" Sebastian murmured, his voice a low, gravelly rumble that somehow carried across the silent room. "Rainwater," Dominic replied, his icy eyes widening slightly. Rainwater and sweet cedar. They began to walk. The crowd parted before them like the Red Sea, terrified of the raw, predatory focus radiating from the co-kings. They bypassed the center of the room entirely, their synchronized strides taking them toward the perimeter, toward the staff quarters, toward the shadows. Harper's hands shook violently. The crystal flutes on her silver tray rattled against each other. Hide! Her survival instinct screamed. She took a step back, trying to slip behind a heavy velvet curtain, but her heel caught on the edge of a rug. She stumbled. The heavy silver tray tipped. Crash! The sound of shattering crystal echoed like a gunshot in the silent ballroom. Champagne splashed across the pristine marble floor, sparkling like broken diamonds. Harper gasped, dropping to her knees in sheer terror, instantly reaching out to gather the jagged shards of glass. "You stupid, clumsy girl! Missus!" Gable hissed from a few feet away, her face purple with rage. "Clean that up immediately before you disgrace us." Silence. The word was spoken quietly, but it carried the weight of an executioner's axe. Mrs. Gable instantly snapped her mouth shut, choking on her own breath as she dropped to her knees in submission. Harper kept her head down, her vision blurred with tears of embarrassment and fear. Her fingers scrambled over the wet floor, one of the shards slicing deep into her palm. She hissed as a drop of her blood hit the marble. Suddenly, 2 pairs of immaculately polished dress shoes stepped into her line of sight. The intoxicating scent of ocean waves and burning embers was now so strong Harper could taste it. The air was practically vibrating with possessive energy. Slowly, an incredibly large, warm hand reached down, entirely ignoring the glass and the spilled champagne. The hand gently, almost reverently, clamped over Harper's bleeding palm. Harper flinched, instinctively trying to pull away, but the grip was firm, sending a jolt of electricity straight up her arm and straight into her chest. She couldn't breathe. She slowly raised her head. Dominic Crawford was kneeling in front of her on the champagne-soaked floor, his expensive suit dipping into the puddle. His icy eyes were completely melted, burning with an obsessive dark fire as he stared at her face. Right beside him, Sebastian crouched down, his chest heaving, his gaze locked onto Harper with a fierce, terrifying hunger. The entire ballroom was completely paralyzed. Derek Sterling, standing just a few yards away, looked as if he had been struck by lightning, his jaw slack as he stared at the omega he had thrown away. Sebastian reached out, his knuckles gently brushing a stray lock of hair away from Harper's pale, stunned face. The touch made her gasp, a full-body shiver racking her small frame. "We've spent 5 years looking for you," Dominic whispered, his voice incredibly soft, meant only for her ears, yet vibrating with undisputed authority. Sebastian leaned in closer, his golden eyes glowing in the dim light of the chandeliers. He lowered his head, pressing his lips gently against the bloodied palm of her hand, right over the cut. "Mine," Sebastian growled, a low, possessive purr that shook the floorboards. Dominic's hand slid to the back of Harper's neck, his thumb resting over her racing pulse. He looked up, his icy gaze sweeping over the utterly silent, shocked faces of the Blackwood pack, before settling back on the trembling Omega in his arms. "Ours," Dominic corrected, his voice ringing out with absolute finality. "Our queen." The absolute silence in the Blackwood Packhouse ballroom was deafening. The co-kings of the entire werewolf realm were kneeling in spilled champagne, completely captivated by the pack's lowest-ranking servant. Derek Sterling's face contorted from shock into a violent, ugly shade of crimson. His pride, inflated by years of grooming to be the next alpha, shattered in the face of this incomprehensible reality. He stepped forward, his fists clenched, unable to stop the reckless words from tumbling out of his mouth. "Your Highnesses, there must be some mistake," Derek stammered loudly, breaking the heavy silence. "That girl, she is Harper Lawson. She is an Omega, a nobody. She cleans our floors. Her bloodline is entirely diluted. The moon goddess would never pair the royal twins with a servant." Sebastian Crawford's head snapped up. The tender, reverent look in his golden eyes vanished instantly, replaced by a terrifying, lethal darkness. He rose to his full height of 6'4", his broad chest expanding as a monstrous, suffocating growl tore from his throat. The sheer force of his alpha aura slammed into the room like a physical shockwave. Several pack members screamed, dropping to the floor, physically forced into submission by the raw power. Derek choked, his knees buckling as he struggled to remain standing under the crushing pressure. "You dare question the moon goddess, boy," Sebastian sneered, taking a slow, predatory step toward Derek. "You dare speak of our mate, our queen, with such disrespect." "Sebastian, enough," Dominic said quietly. He did not raise his voice, but the icy, commanding tone instantly halted his twin's advance. Dominic gracefully stood up, effortlessly lifting Harper into his arms as if she weighed nothing at all. He held her securely against his chest, tucking her head under his chin to shield her from the horrified stares of her former abusers. Dominic leveled a glare so cold at Derek and Alpha Cove Sterling that the older man actually began to tremble. "We know exactly who she is," Dominic stated, his voice ringing with absolute authority. "And we know exactly what you did to her, Derek Sterling. Do you think the royal court is blind? Our private intelligence network has been monitoring the provincial packs for years. We know you rejected her on your 18th birthday to secure a cheap political alliance with a beta's daughter." Chloe Harrington, standing off to the side, let out a pathetic whimper, shrinking back into the crowd. "You threw away a diamond because you were too ignorant to recognize its worth," Dominic continued, his eyes narrowing. "You treated our queen like a slave. For that, the Blackwood Dominion will face a total restructuring. Your trade routes are suspended, your pack borders are officially under royal martial law." Alpha Cove fell to his knees. "Your Highness, please." "He is young. He didn't know." "Save your breath for the royal tribunal," Sebastian spat. He turned his attention back to Harper, his expression softening instantly. "We are leaving. Bring the jet around." Within minutes, Harper was ushered out of the suffocating pack house and into the cool night air. She was trembling uncontrollably, her mind completely short-circuiting. Less than an hour ago, she had been terrified of Mrs. Gable's wrath over a dropped tray. Now, she was wrapped in a cashmere coat that smelled of ocean waves and embers, sitting in the back of a heavily armored Maybach, flanked by the two most dangerous men in the world. They drove to a private airstrip where a sleek Gulfstream jet was waiting. As they boarded, Harper finally found her voice. It was raspy and small. I can't be your mate," she whispered, pulling her coat tighter around herself as she sat on the plush leather sofa of the jet. "I'm broken. Derek rejected me. It severed something inside my wolf. And I'm just an Omega. I have no power. You need a Luna who can lead, someone who isn't afraid of her own shadow." Dominic sat across from her, pouring a glass of water and sliding it gently across the table. "Drink." "Harper." She took a sip, her hand still shaking slightly. Sebastian sat right beside her, keeping a respectful distance but close enough that his warmth radiated against her side. "You have been lied to your entire life, Harper," Sebastian said, his voice surprisingly gentle. Harper looked at him, confused. "Lied to?" Dominic pulled a sleek, leather-bound folder from his briefcase. "Our private legal counsel at Latham & Watkins, the human firm that handles the royal family's global asset management and historical archives, recently uncovered a hidden addendum in the Blackwood Dominion's founding treaties," Dominic explained, leaning forward. "You are not an Omega, Harper." Harper stared at the documents, her heart pounding. "What do you mean? Both of my parents were Omegas. They died in a rogue attack when I was a baby." "Your adoptive parents were Omegas," Sebastian corrected softly. "Your biological parents were Alpha William and Luna Serafina of the Silvermane Pack. They weren't killed by rogues. They were murdered by Cove Sterling's father 30 years ago, who then absorbed their territory to create the Blackwood Dominion. You were an infant. To prevent an uprising, they stripped you of your name, bound your wolf's aura with dark rituals, and raised you as a slave so you would never challenge their bloodline." Harper's breath hitched. The words washed over her, unlocking a deep, buried truth within her soul. The phantom pull she had felt, the resilience that kept her alive despite the brutal rejection, it wasn't the stubbornness of an Omega. It was the dormant, furious pride of a stolen alpha bloodline. "You are a Silvermane," Dominic said, his eyes burning with fierce devotion. "A descendant of the first white wolves. Your soul is older and stronger than any modern pack leader. You weren't broken by Derek's rejection, Harper. Your wolf simply realized he was entirely beneath her, and she went to sleep to wait for us." Tears streamed down Harper's face as decades of humiliation, pain, and confusion finally clicked into place. She wasn't worthless. She was royalty. "We will not rush you," Sebastian murmured, reaching out to gently wipe a tear from her cheek. "We know you have been hurt. We know you are afraid. But we have waited 5 years for you. We will wait 50 more if that is what you need. But make no mistake, Harper. You are ours, and we will burn the world down to keep you safe." 6 months passed. The royal estate, a sprawling fortified palace nestled in the remote, snow-capped mountains of the north, had become Harper's sanctuary. Under the fiercely protective, yet incredibly patient care of Dominic and Sebastian, Harper transformed. The dark rituals that had suppressed her wolf were systematically broken by the royal healers. As her true nature awoke, so did her appearance. Her pale eyes took on an ethereal, luminescent silver glow. Her posture straightened, radiating a quiet, absolute authority that commanded respect without demanding it. She was no longer the frightened girl scrubbing floors. She was a stunning, terrifyingly powerful Luna. Her bond with the twins deepened with every passing day. They were opposites who perfectly balanced each other. Dominic taught her the intricacies of pack politics, global finance, and strategy. Sebastian trained her in combat, teaching her how to channel her suppressed rage into physical power. They treated her not just as a mate, but as an absolute equal. The love they shared was intense, possessive, and all-consuming. Today was the day of the royal coronation and the official Luna marking ceremony. It was to be the most publicized event in werewolf history, broadcasted to every pack on the continent. Harper stood before a full-length gilded mirror in the royal chambers. She wore a breathtaking, custom-made gown of midnight blue silk and silver lace, designed specifically for her. Her silver hair cascaded down her back in elegant waves. Around her neck rested a priceless diamond necklace, a family heirloom retrieved from the vaults of Coates & Co., the prestigious private wealth bank that managed the billions of dollars now legally transferred back to the newly reinstated Silvermane estate. She looked like a goddess. A knock sounded at the door, and Dominic and Sebastian entered. They wore perfectly tailored ceremonial military uniforms, looking impossibly handsome and lethal. When they saw her, both men stopped dead in their tracks, the breath catching in their throats. "You are," Sebastian started, practically vibrating with awe. "Magnificent," Dominic finished, stepping forward to kiss her knuckles. "Are you ready, our queen?" Sebastian asked, offering his arm. "I'm ready," Harper said, her voice steady and clear. The grand cathedral of the royal capital was packed with thousands of high-ranking alphas, betas, and dignitaries from across the globe. As the heavy wooden doors swung open, and the co-kings entered with Harper between them, a collective gasp echoed through the cavernous space. No one could believe that the radiant, powerful woman walking down the aisle was the same discarded Omega from the Blackwood pack. The ceremony proceeded flawlessly. The high priest stepped forward to officially bind their souls in front of the moon goddess. But just as Dominic and Sebastian bared their fangs to place the royal claiming marks upon Harper's neck, a chaotic shout erupted from the back of the cathedral. "Stop the ceremony!" The crowd parted violently as Derek Sterling shoved his way down the center aisle, looking disheveled, manic, and desperate. Behind him, flanked by royal guards, were his father Cove and a terrified Chloe Harrington. The Blackwood Dominion had been financially ruined over the past 6 months, their assets frozen, their pack members defecting. Derek, entirely blinded by jealousy and desperation, had staged a final, suicidal attempt to reclaim his lost glory. "This ceremony is illegal," Derek shouted, holding up a rolled piece of parchment. "Under the ancient rites of the Blood Moon, an alpha's claim supersedes all others. Harper Lawson was my fated mate first. The High Council never officially ratified my rejection on paper. She belongs to the Blackwood Dominion, and I demand my right to challenge the Co-Kings for her return." A shocked, horrified murmur rippled through the crowd. Challenging the Co-Kings was a death sentence, but invoking an ancient right was a legal loophole that, technically, could halt a coronation if not handled properly. Dominic's eyes turned entirely black. Sebastian let out a roar that shook the stained glass windows, his claws extending as he prepared to leap off the dais and rip Derek's head from his shoulders. But Harper raised a single hand. Instantly, Sebastian and Dominic froze, yielding to her silent command. Harper stepped down from the altar, her silver gown sweeping across the marble. She walked down the steps, approaching Derek with the calm, terrifying grace of a predator stalking a crippled mouse. Derek stood his ground, though his hands were shaking violently. "You're coming back with me, Harper. You're mine." "Yours?" Harper laughed, a cold, musical sound that sent shivers down the spines of everyone in the room. "You threw me in the dirt. You paraded me as a joke. You chained my wolf and stole my legacy." "I am an alpha," Derek screamed, trying to project his aura to force her into submission. It was a fatal mistake. Harper didn't flinch. Instead, she unleashed her true power. The dormant spirit of the first white wolves exploded from her chest. An aura so blindingly pure, so overwhelmingly dominant, blasted through the cathedral. It was heavier than Dominic's, wilder than Sebastian's. Derek choked, his eyes rolling back in his head as the sheer pressure of her aura crushed him to the floor. Beside him, his father and Chloe collapsed, gasping for air, unable to withstand the presence of a true ancient royal. Every single wolf in the cathedral, including the high-ranking alphas, involuntarily dropped to their knees, bowing their heads in ultimate submission. Even Dominic and Sebastian, standing on the dais, fell to one knee, their eyes glowing with intense pride and adoration for their queen. "My name is not Harper Lawson," she stated, her voice amplified by her wolf, echoing like thunder. "I am Harper Silvermane, rightful heir to the Silvermane territory, and I am the Luna Queen of the United Dominions. You rejected a servant, Derek, but a queen rejects you." She looked down at the trembling, pathetic man bleeding from his nose on the marble floor. "The Blackwood Pack is hereby dissolved," Harper decreed. "Your lands will be returned to the Silvermane survivors. Cove and Derek Sterling, you are stripped of your titles, your wealth, and your wolf spirits. You will spend the rest of your human lives working in the lowest levels of the royal mines." And Chloe, Harper glanced at the sobbing girl. "You wanted to live in a palace so badly. You will join the kitchen staff. Perhaps Mrs. Gable can teach you how to scrub a floor." Harper turned her back on them, not sparing them another glance, as the royal guards immediately dragged the screaming traitors away. She walked back up the steps to the altar, extending her hands to Dominic and Sebastian. They took her hands, standing up, their faces reflecting absolute worship. Simultaneously, the twin kings leaned in. Dominic's fangs pierced the delicate skin on the right side of her neck, while Sebastian's pierced the left. A fiery, beautiful agony ripped through her veins, sealing a three-way bond that illuminated the cathedral with a blinding silver light. The discarded Omega was dead. The Silvermane Queen had risen, flanked by the two most dangerous men in the world, and they would rule the shadows, together, forever. Did you love this story of ultimate revenge and fated mates? If you want to see more thrilling werewolf romance, billionaire drama, and forbidden bonds, make sure to hit that like button. Share this video with your fellow romance addicts, and subscribe to the channel so you never miss an update. Let us know in the comments what you want to hear next. Thanks for listening.